This is what Nico Iamaleava had to say yesterday when he visited with the media. I know what I came here to do, and it's my job to go get that done. That's from Nico Iamaleava. So, John, let me begin with you. Nico is blank, and I give you 3 C words to choose from: cool, confident, cocky.
Oh, he's confident. He's just what
Why?
he needs to be.
Okay.
And he's also accountable. I like the fact he's saying this basically this is what I was hired to do. And he was hired. And I know what my job is. He's accepting the responsibility. I really like that.
Caleb, cool, confident, or cocky?
Oh, I think confident too. And I think he's been confident the whole time. And guys, I read that quote, and I know it's standard coach speak, but what I wanted to talk about is, John, tell me if I'm crazy. I think Nico was dropping a hint of I should have been the starter last year. I should have been starting the whole time.
I think you're reading too much into that, but he should have been. I mean,
I think he should have been, and he also had another quote that Caleb may be referring to as I prepared every week this upcoming season and this offseason, just like I did in the game weeks. Well, if he prepared like that, then he should have started over Joe Milton.
well, yeah. I mean, I think anybody who watched that bowl game had to be thinking, why hasn't this guy been playing all year?
Nah, and there were even odds on it. Brought to you by BetUS. With BetUS, you get 125% sign-on bonus 3 times plus 10% of that bettor's insurance. BetUS, a partner of Off the Hook Sports, so support them with that click right down below.
America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
I'm going with cocky, guys. And cocky has a negative connotation, but not in this case. You better be cocky. You better be, you can keep it behind closed doors if you want to, but at the end of the day, you better look at yourself in the mirror and say, I don't care if his name's Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, or whoever he is. I'm the best quarterback that's walked the face of the earth. And I got no problem with that, John, if he looks himself in the mirror and says that every single day. I think he's cocky, and I think there's something to be said for that in a positive manner, because I covered a guy who is exactly like that in Casey Clausen. I think Casey was cocky deep down. I think he believed he'd get it done. And when you ask him, I go, what do you guys need to go out to do today? It was a win. Like, we were idiots. And he was kind of right.
Speak for yourself, Dave. I think no, I think he's setting just the right tone. You don't have to go. If he were cocky, he'd say, "Well, I'm here to win a couple of championships, and that's no problem for me. I'll do just that. Thanks for buying me, guys." No, I think he set the right tone. I think this guy is more mature, a lot more mature than the average first year player. And again, I know that's an intangible, but the more I think about it and the more I look back on last season, this guy should have been playing. He should have been the quarterback.
I want to say shoulda, coulda, woulda, Caleb, but it is something that kind of sticks in my craw because I was right about it from the get.
Well, and this is the quote to the reason I brought this up is Nico himself said, quote, he was asked if he was asked about if he's approaching anything different this year. And he said, I think, like I said, even for last year, I think I approached every day like I was the starter. And then he was asked again if it feels different being the starter. And he said, I won't say it necessarily feels different. I think now just knowing I'm the starter, a lot of guys depend on me. He's saying like he's been approaching this since like he was the starter since last year. And I think he thought he was, I was for keeping him safe or not starting him last year because he even talked about how he needed to put on weight. But I think that I will say this. I think he doesn't feel like he got a fair chance to actually win the starting job last year. And that wouldn't be the first time someone didn't get a fair chance to beat out Joe Milton for the starting job, like Hendon Hooker didn't get a fair chance either.
Okay. That's conspiracy, Caleb, but it's not crazy, Caleb. And here's what I'm going to tell you about that. Before I tell you first, it's Don Self, State Farm customer service still matters. For over 40 years, they built their business on taking care of the customers in the greater Chattanooga area. Call 423-396-2126, 423-396-2126, or go to donself.net. That's donself.net. It's conspiracy to think that coming into the season or at any point during the season, Nico Iamaleava believed that he should be the starter and first-team player over Joe Milton. That's a conspiracy in and of itself that would involve more than one person. So therefore, it is a conspiracy. But I think it's really, really believable. I think when Nico goes to his dad or goes to somebody else, he's not complaining, but he's saying, I'm better than that dude right now, so I should be playing ahead of him. So I don't think it falls into crazy, Caleb, at all. I think it's on the money, and I think that the Iamaleava family would like everybody to know out there, despite the narrative that was passed along that he wanted a red shirt, that he was ready to go last year and probably could have helped the Vols, which Caleb and I disagree on, in the win-loss department. I think he was ready to go last year, John.
Yeah, he probably was. And again, we saw that in the Orange Bowl performance. That didn't look like someone starting his first college football game.
But Citrus.
Citrus. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm confusing him with Hendon Hooker. Here's the thing, though, with Josh Heupel. And most coaches are going this route. They are very reluctant when you have a guy who's perceived as a team leader at quarterback to make a change. I think the whole narrative changes dramatically if Joe Milton hadn't played well in the Orange Bowl the year before. I just think after that, I think the team liked Joe Milton. They looked to him for leadership. But I think
that narrative's been that he was a great leader. It's so overplayed.
Yeah, well, again, I'm a firm believer in talent trumps everything else. I'm not speaking for myself here. I'm kind of conveying Josh Heupel's thinking on it.
No, I got you.
But I believe the best guy, it doesn't matter if he's a freshman or what the team chemistry is or what. You got to play the best player. Always. That always should trump everything else.
I'm gonna go further, guys. I'm gonna go to another crazy Caleb conspiracy, and I need to pour a little coffee because this is crazy. Caleb wants some caffeine when he's about to do this. Okay, so let's just do it right now. And there's no mayonnaise in this coffee. I'm not Will Levis, and that was disgusting. I had to do that last year, John, because I lost a bet with Dave. But let me just point this out.
That's crazy.
Okay, Josh Heupel. I've actually not knocked the decision to start Joe Milton last year, but I am going to knock Josh Heupel's intent. Josh Heupel started Joe Milton last year for the same reason he started Joe Milton in 2022 over Hendon Hooker, to save face. Heupel himself is cocky. And Heupel I'm dead serious about this. He took over at Tennessee and he said, I want my guy to start at quarterback. I don't care if other quarterbacks are better than him. So I'm going to go out and get Joe Milton. And I don't care that Hendon Hooker is better in practice than Joe Milton. I'm still starting Joe Milton because I picked him and I'm the smart one and nobody else is. I think that's Josh Heupel. And I'm not saying that's always bad, but I think it was bad with Joe Milton. I think Josh Heupel refused to admit to himself that he screwed up taking Joe Milton in the transfer portal 2 years ago. And he will never acknowledge to himself that he made that mistake. And the only way he cannot acknowledge that to himself is if he started Joe Milton, even if it was the poor decision, because I think he's that cocky.
John?
Well, I think if Caleb's right, that's not a good sign for Tennessee football.
Well, but John, he's not differentiating between Hendon Hooker and Gaston Moore. I mean, there are times in talent judgment where it can be a 60-40. It can be a close call. He
That
didn't pick the
wasn't a
right guy.
close call.
No,
That
no,
wasn't a
That wasn't
close
a close
call. It
call at
wasn't
all.
remotely close.
Yeah, Hendon Hooker was significantly better when he
Oh
when
my
you saw him play.
gosh. I mean, remember Joe Milton in that Bowling Green in his first games when he played that game? And I will say he improved remarkably over that game, because when I watched that game, I don't know, it was something like what, 38-6 or something. I don't remember the score, but Tennessee had the game in hand against a weak opponent. But my gosh, I said, this guy doesn't look like an SEC quarterback. I mean, even with his strength and size, it looked like he didn't want to get hit. I mean, he was preparing to go down when contact was forthcoming. Oh my gosh. I mean, I don't understand how Josh Heupel looked at Joe Milton, knowing his offense as well as he does, how he looked at Joe Milton at Michigan and said, "That's my guy." What was
don't
he
either.
thinking? I don't get
Well,
it.
I'm gonna ask both of you. It's brought to you by Quality Tire Pro. The Eberle family has been Chattanooga community members since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake alignment. Stop by and say, "Hey, Bo." Tell them Off the Hook Sports sent you. Hey, Bo, support our sponsors. That's why we're here. Do you think that Josh Heupel has learned from this? Because I could go back and pick another couple of situations that perhaps were because of personnel, but is it Elijah Simmons, who should have never been playing middle linebacker? He's not a fit there. I could go into it and say that Cedric Tillman and Brew McCoy should have come out together, because I think that's the most talented receivers Tennessee has had outside of a guy who's a perfect fit for the slot with his speed, and Jalen Hyatt. Man, I could go through and find places where I think more talented players were kept on the bench. So how big of a concern is this, John?
Well, with those positions, I don't see the obvious disparity. The thing that concerns me is the quarterback situation. I mean, that's the most important position. That's what the position Josh Heupel played. That's his track record for developing quarterbacks and winning with different style quarterbacks. That has baffled me the entire time, because I think he's a really good offensive coach, and I love his offense. And I didn't understand what Joe Milton can't throw effectively on the run. He
Or
just can't.
no,
And so how do
or in the pocket, which is bad.
I know, but he's more of a pocket passer than he is throwing on the run. I mean, this offense to work at the highest level, your quarterback needs a Johnny Manziel type. Somebody can be accurate, throwing off balance on the run, whatever. Joe Milton couldn't do that. So I don't understand how Josh Heupel could see this player and think he's going to be a perfect fit for my offense. He was a horrible fit for this offense. To Tennessee's credit, it still won 9 games in the nation's toughest conference.
Yeah, and I'll say this too, Caleb. On our message board, Milton may have been Heupel's project, and it didn't quite pan out like he thought. Easy for me to say. I think there's a very good chance of that. I think this is like the one guy, you got the sports car out in the garage and you really want it to get up and running, but at some point you realize that you've got something that's every bit as effective and is a lot more dependable. Not to say that Nico doesn't have incredible athletic ability. He does, but just because he can't throw the ball 98.5 yards doesn't mean that he's not a whole heck of a lot better than Joe Milton.
So the one thing I will say, to be fair to Heupel, and I'm contradicting myself because I'm still critical of what he did, and I think it's very problematic. And I agree mostly with John. I also agree, John. I don't care what they say they saw in practice. I will never. He doesn't open it to the public. I will never believe, ever, for as long as I live, that Joe Milton looked comparable to Hendon Hooker in practice. I think Hendon Hooker looked better in practice and was clearly better in the game. I will say that Jim Harbaugh also thought Joe Milton was a good fit for his offense. And remember, Jim Harbaugh's the passing part of his offense are West Coast concepts. Who thinks Joe Milton is your guy for short intermediate passing routes down the sideline? I mean, that's actually more baffling than Josh Heupel, because at least Joe Milton has the deep ball. Dave may have a point in the sense that maybe coaches and GMs just can't resist that big arm. They just, I said, it's like the toxic girl at the bar that you know is bad for you, you know is going to cause you problems.
But she doesn't have,
drunk.
Yeah, but she doesn't have a stitch of clothes on.
Yeah, and she's hot and drunk, and you just can't, I mean, it's like that.
Cindy Crawford in her prime with a drinking problem and has decided to become a nudist. John, you can't pass that up.
No, but I think you could pass Joe Milton up. Look, this is nothing. This isn't a new development. We're just talking about Joe Milton in this case. We've seen it for years. We've seen it for decades. Somebody with a super powerful arm. Oh man, I can't resist him. Why can't you resist it? We look at the quarterbacks who win Super Bowls, who win championships. Joe Montana was going to knock down his receivers with a pass. I mean, all these guys, we see it again and again. You think Josh Heupel was putting an Elway cross in his receivers at Oklahoma? No. This position is about processing information, about seeing the whole field, about being accurate, about coming through in the clutch, about rallying your team. It's not a strongman competition.
Nah,
but John, we've also seen for not just decades, we've seen for millennia that hot women can be very, very, very threatening and damaging if you're not careful. And we still fall for it as men. We still, millennia of evidence that they can derail you if they're toxic, and we still fall for it.
Okay, well, let's set this analogy aside, okay, because you guys really kind of like talking about this a little too much. I don't know how your wives will respond to it, and maybe they'll be fine. But let's just forget that for a minute. We're talking about somebody who doesn't fit your offense, and you're thinking, "Yeah, he does. I'll make him fit." No, you won't.
Bullshit.
Dave, I still every time John talks, I'm like, my analogy works better.
Caleb took one like right to the chest, and he tried to become devil's advocate, but I mean, it's just that wasn't a good fit in the get, and there we go. And also, I think Kalen on the message board brings up the greatest point. Milton restricted their offense half the field most of the time. That to me was the underlying issue. And people try to say, oh, that Joey Halsley. I mean, that's like the equivalent of going into a Walmart and blaming the greeter for not being able to teach you how a television's supposed to hook up to your amplifier, which is
what if the greeter's incredibly hot and wearing hardly any clothing? Does that change the analogy, Dave?
Hard to resist.
Well, then I ain't making the electronics section.
Guys, how often have businesses sold bad products for decades, for centuries, using hot women? I mean,
that's hot.
Hooters wings are mediocre, and they still sell because they have people working there that we all want to see.
Caleb, I think you do great work, and I don't want to take anything away from you, but I do feel like you've been kind of master of the obvious in the last 30 seconds.
Master of the obvious?
No kidding.